My grandmother left me most of her estate when she passed away, and my cousins went nuts. My grandmother Ethel was a huge light in my life. When I was young, I used to think of her house as a magical mansion, and as I got older, I realized the house had belonged to her parents. Grandma was old money, and a lot of it, but I didn't really know this until she passed away and left me a fortune. I visited Grandma usually about every other day, not out of obligation, but because I really loved her company. She was a great storyteller, and she told me stories about her life that kept me on edge and showed me how the world had changed and how she was a part of that. She taught me to bake, and we kept a recipe book of the things we had baked together. She taught me to cook warm, hearty meals. I loved walking through the library where books lined the walls up to the ceiling and breathing in the old book smell. The nursery hadn't been redecorated since Grandma was a baby, and in it still sat an old wooden crib and a rocking horse with wiry hair. It was a time capsule that I explored for years. Grandma was 91 when she passed away in her sleep. She had become frail over time and slowed down, but her mind was still sharp. Her passing shocked me, as I didn't expect it. I couldn't accept that my visits had ended, that I'd never hear her voice again, or bake anything new to add to the recipe book. I'm not Grandma's only grandchild. There's me and my cousins, Gary and Lucy. We're all in our 30s, close enough in age to have grown up together, far enough apart in temperament to have drifted into entirely different orbits. Lucy lives for appearances, Gary for convenience. I lived 5 streets away from Grandma and oriented my life around our relationship. Lucy and Gary insisted Grandma should be in a care home. They framed it as concern, but it always came out sounding like logistics. "It's safer," Lucy would say, her voice clipped. "More practical." Gary nodded along, already half absent, as if the decision were a foregone conclusion. Grandma hated the idea. "I didn't build a life just to be shelved," she told me once, her eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. Her body had slowed, yes, her steps careful, her hands sometimes trembling, but her mind was clear, and she knew what she wanted. She read the paper every morning, corrected my grammar without mercy, and beat me at chess whenever I got complacent. Lucy and Gary visited for holidays and birthdays, sweeping in to get their gifts, but never stayed long and never showed any interest in Grandma's life. They didn't call just to ask how she was. When they did come, Grandma brightened anyway. She never held grudges where family was concerned. But afterwards, I had seen her look tired in a way that had nothing to do with her age. When Grandma passed, I went to her house. The kettle wasn't whistling on the stove like it so often did. She had always said she didn't like newfangled technology and insisted she would not use the electric kettle my mom had bought her one Christmas. The house felt so empty without her. I walked through the library. I went to her bedroom. I picked up her perfume bottle. One smell of it, and I burst into tears. At the funeral, people spoke about her generosity, her elegance, and her legacy. They spoke about how she had continued her father's business after his passing, and did it with a smile on her face. I stood there numb, clutching the folded order of service, feeling like they were all talking about someone I knew in a completely different way. A week later, we gathered in a lawyer's office for the reading of the will. Lucy wore black silk and tapped her foot impatiently. Gary slouched in his chair, scrolling on his phone. My parents sat stiffly beside me. My aunt was across the room. I hadn't thought much about the will. Grandma and I had talked about many things, but money wasn't one of them. I was still in shock that we were all gathered here because Grandma wasn't here anymore. I wore my locket, the one she had bought me when I graduated at 18. I held onto it like I could somehow hold onto her a little longer. The lawyer cleared his throat and began. He gave a sort of preamble, but soon the main verdict came out. "Ethel's house and the contents have been left to Victoria." I started crying. Grandma left me 2/3 of her liquid assets, totaling $650,000. The house was worth just under $1 million. Lucy and Gary were each left $10,000, and my parents and my aunt split the rest. The room went silent apart from me quietly crying, and then Lucy laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. Gary's face had flushed red. "This is a joke," he said. "It has to be." It wasn't. They accused me of manipulating Grandma, of isolating her and influencing her while she was, quote, vulnerable. I barely had any time to grieve before they filed to contest the will. It became public record, clinical and brutal. I learned more legal terminology in 3 months than I ever wanted to know. But Grandma had been thorough, painfully so. She'd kept diaries for decades, volumes of them, each dated and indexed in her neat looping script. They detailed her days, who visited and who called. Page after page mentioned me, my visits, our conversations, the meals we shared. Lucy and Gary appeared sporadically, usually with notes like, "Lucy stopped by for an hour, got her check and left," or "Gary came for his birthday, left after 15 minutes. There was also a letter written in the same steady hand attached to the will. In it, Grandma explained her choices plainly. She said she wanted to reward presence, love, not obligation. She wrote that I had given her companionship, dignity, and joy in her final years, and that she wanted me to have the means to live fully and to keep the house alive. The court found that Grandma had full mental capacity when she wrote the will. My lawyer stated it simply. While Gary and Lucy may not like Ethel's choices, they were hers to make. The will was upheld. Lucy cried, and Gary swore. Neither of them spoke to me afterward. Their anger didn't stop there. Gary let himself into the house one afternoon using a spare key he'd kept for years that no one remembered he had. I wasn't home, but a neighbor saw him and called the police. He was arrested for breaking and entering. Lucy took to social media, painting me as a greedy villain who'd stolen her inheritance. She named names, shared photos, twisted truths, and strangers weighed in, painting me with the same brush she had. I sent a cease and desist letter to Lucy. She took the posts down, but it didn't change what people thought of me. So I started sharing Grandma's legacy in a different way. I created a Facebook page dedicated to her, sharing her recipes, making videos showing the techniques she had taught me, and sharing parts of her writing. Her diaries were a historical record, and I would post excerpts. People from our town joined the group, and Grandma became, in a small way, our town's grandma. People commented about trying our recipes and shared photos of how things turned out. After losing the light in my life, seeing Grandma in other people's lives started to bring that light back. My family is fractured now. Some days that hurts more than I expect. Other days I walk through Grandma's house and remember the letter she wrote. She wanted me to have this. I'm restoring it slowly and carefully, bringing it back to its former glory without erasing the life she lived there. And in the back garden where she always imagined it, I've started building a small shelter for stray cats. Grandma loved them fiercely, always saying they deserved somewhere warm to sleep. I miss her every day, but I carry her with me and try to uphold her legacy and her teachings in the best way I can. And sometimes in rare moments I can still hear her voice correcting my grammar and telling me to fold in the flour properly. Grandma's memory is being shared with more people now. The Facebook page has grown, and there are cats with full bellies and a warm bed to sleep in. I think and hope Grandma would be proud. If you enjoyed this reading, please hit like and subscribe so you don't miss future stories. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. This has been Tales by Rachel, where we breathe life into every story.